Hello my friends, David Kessler here and welcome back to the studio. Let's talk about 5 ways that you can make your paintings better. I'm going to talk about several different things here. The 5 ways, and sometimes when you're looking at these 5 ways, maybe if you look at your painting and say, what if I did the opposite? And we're going to touch on that. And that sometimes works. A friend of mine, and some of you may know him, Kevin Balfus, who's an amazing nationally recognized figurative painter. We had a discussion one time about this idea, and he and I are both big fans of Seinfeld. So there's an episode, and I've talked about this before, in Seinfeld where George Costanza is encouraged to do the opposite. Well, Kevin and I have that philosophy in your work. When you're looking at your work, do the opposite. Maybe what you've got is not right, so do the opposite. He calls it, what would George Costanza do? So whatever that acronym is for what would George Costanza do. And that's what he uses for his students, and I think it's a wonderful idea. So let's go through these. First, look at the shapes in your painting. And I've talked about this before. Everything in the painting is a shape, right? There's no trees or skies or anything. Everything's a shape, tree shape, sky shape, rock shapes. Right, so look at the shapes. That's the first thing. Are the shapes different sizes? Are they interesting in their configuration? Do you have small, medium, and large shapes? Do the shapes interlock with their neighbors? All right, these are all good things to ask yourself as you're looking at the painting. This is step number 1. Look at the shapes. And if they're not, if they're all the same size, then do the opposite. Make them different sizes. If they don't interlock with their neighbors, do the opposite and interlock them with their neighbors, their neighboring shapes. All right? Shapes. Number 2, the values. Look at the values in your painting. Are the values all weak and anemic? Do they have a full range of values from light to dark? So light, middle value, dark middle value, and dark. Do they have that full range to create contrast? Do the values differentiate your shapes one from another? Right? Do the values rather create enough contrast so that you have a center of interest that pops off the page? Is there significant contrast? If not, right, if you don't have a full range of values, then add those in there. If it's anemic in the values, then punch the values up, right? Think about doing the opposite of what you've done to make the painting better. Number 3, look at the color. Are your colors muddy? Have you used a color combination that is harmonious? Have you used the color wheel to determine what your colors should be before you paint? Do their colors go together? Do they look like they go together? Just because they're 2 colors, it doesn't mean they go together. Right? I mean, if you're decorating your house, if you go to the hardware store and just randomly pick 2 colors of paint and slap them on the walls of your house, that doesn't mean they're going to go together. That doesn't mean they're going to be harmonious or make you feel good when you look at those colors. Same way when you're painting on a canvas or making a painting, right? The colors, if they go together, it makes for a more enjoyable experience for your viewer. Right? So if the colors are weak or anemic, maybe you punch some colors up here or there. If the colors that you look at them and think, gosh, those are just boring, well then maybe in a few areas you hit a higher intensity of color to make it more interesting. Look at your center of interest. Have you made a center of interest with the color? Does the color pop enough to make an important part of the painting? Right? I mean, you're using color and contrast and all these things to make sure that some parts are more interesting than other parts. Right? So if all your shapes are the same size, for instance, we talked about, that's going to be boring. If all your values are the same, that's going to be boring. If your colors are muddy, or maybe you don't have areas that are different from one another, right, then maybe punch the color up here or there. Okay, number 4, edges. What I mean by edges are the edges of your shapes, right? Do you have hard edges and soft edges? Do you have only hard edges? And if you do have only hard edges, then it's going to be really hard for anybody's eye to move through your painting easily. Right? Edges can be used to help people's eye move through the painting. They can stop you at the center of interest as well. Right? If you're like a camera and you kind of focus on that center of interest and it blurs as you move away, then that helps the center of interest stand out and gives you a variety of edges. So look at your edge quality. Are they all blended and nothing pops? Add some pop, add some hard edges. Are they all hard edges and your eye can't move through? Then maybe soften some edges here or there to link some shapes together so that your eye can move through. Number 5, center of interest. Do you have a center of interest? Is there a defined center of interest? Is it more important? Is there an area that's more important than other areas of the painting? That's what a center of interest is. You're making it more important by making it higher contrast. Maybe you have a higher intensity of color. You have a pop there. Your edges are harder. All these things. So if you don't have a center of interest, think about how can you make one. How can you make some parts of your painting more important than other areas? Because you need active areas. You need restful areas. You need interesting areas. And you need some areas that are boring, to be quite honest, or less interesting to make the more interesting areas pop. Remember, all parts of the painting aren't equal. And so many abstract painters make every single square inch of the painting exactly the same. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you do that, then everything's equal and nothing is special. So think about how can you make a special place, a place that's more important, a place that's more interesting, a place where your eye can go and really look around to see what is the most important part of your painting. Those are 5 steps, right? Look at the shapes, look at the values, look at the colors, look at your edges of your shapes, and look at your center of interest. And if those things are weak, then maybe you do the opposite and you try to reinforce those, make them stronger. If they're too strong, maybe you need to weaken them a little bit, right? So think about what would George Costanza do, as Kevin Balfa says. How can that help you looking at those 5 ways to help make your painting better? All right, hope this was helpful for you. All right, join me for a workshop. I got a link to the list of workshops for 2019. I'd love to see you there. I've got a lot of them coming up at the studio in 2019 too, more than ever before. Helps to, alleviate some of my travel that I do all the time. So join me here, small group, right? Only 5 people. Right, only 5 people, so you're going to get a lot of instruction. We're going to feed you while you're here, right? We're going to have a great time. So join me for a workshop. Hopefully I'll see you there. And if not, I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.